Philadelphia Wizard World was a 4-day event at Pennsylvania Convention Center celebrating geek culture. But not for nothing, the celebrity photos were expensive and the body odor was thick.
I think you are overestimating how people know the difference between Comic-Con and Wizard World.
I may be.
Comic-Con is a brand.
Yes.
And Wizard World is a brand. And they are both technically comic conventions. Comic-Con is a comic convention, although there are very few comic books. But they're...
It's getting political already.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying. I'm just asking questions. I feel like the normies, regular people, don't know the difference between these things, and even know that Comic-Con it actually is an abbreviation for this brand of comic convention. But we don't have that. I guess they're here now, but back in my day, we had Wizard World, and Wizard World was for wizards.
Yep. I put on my wizard cloak and hat.
I put on my hat. That's like an ancient meme.
Wizard Magazine was a comic guide, a comic book price guide,
but so much more than a guide.
So much more sophomoric nonsense inside.
I like the custom toys that people submitted.
And I enjoyed the fan art.
The fan art, yeah.
But I think that they did a good job in spreading the lore of San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con.
Even though their brand was Wizard.
Yeah, but it was like before they started doing conventions.
Oh, that makes sense. Right,
they were just like promoting like Comic-Con. And so that's how it even like got into the public consciousness that like the Comic-Con is a general thing, not this very specific brand.
Nerd culture changed in the early 2000s, and I almost say we kicked it off with the first Spider-Man movie.
Yeah,
and I feel like in the aughts, the 2000s, there was this change that it's like this isn't for nerds anymore. This is actually pretty cool, and it switched. I don't know exactly how that happened besides this one particular movie, but like there's like jocks who go see these
Marvel movies.
They beat you up. Like, you're DC, I'm a Marvel.
Yeah, tough guys with Wolverine tattoos.
Guys with Wolverine tattoos. Cops with Punisher tattoos.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind. This was nerd shit. We used to get chased around for having this stuff in our.
Like, is this your T-shirt? Yeah. It's Zito's. Get him.
So this magazine, Wizard Magazine, they promoted the idea of comic cons and comic conventions, and then eventually they started hosting their own in Chicago. So I guess, I was all hype.
But that wasn't like, but there were comic book conventions outside of Comic-Con.
Yes. They were lame.
They were
terrible.
What?
You're not. I remember being I read in the Review or something.
The South Philly Review. The Chronicle.
Review. It was the Chronicle because my grandmother got it and she was closer to like 24th and Jackson, and that's like over there they had a different name for the Review. Chronicle. So I guess she read in the Chronicle that there was going to be a comic book convention at the Holiday Inn at 10th and Packer. And so like one Sunday morning I was like, bye Mom, I'm going to go hang out with a bunch of middle-aged men at a hotel. Later. There was one comic book professional there. It was the guy who used to draw Aquaman at the time. And I brought like a bunch of like my art because like I was like 13 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was really nice. He like critiqued my stuff and was like, oh, you want to work on this and you want to do that. And I was like, wow, man, thanks. And he gave me like some free stuff that he autographed. And he was like, if you really want to make it in the industry, get good at drawing flaming swords and girls in bathing suits.
What a tip. He should have told you, don't pursue this life.
So Wizard Magazine starts a convention in Chicago, and then they decide in 2002 they're going to expand into the East Coast, and with a lot of publicity, they announce the Philadelphia Wizard World Convention.
And so San Diego Comic-Con was just going in there, and that was building a building. But were they in New York yet, you think?
Yeah, they were in New York. There was
so
in
New
York
Philly,
Comic-Con.
this was the Philly convention.
Yeah.
Got you.
I think it was called the Wizard World East Coast at first, but it became Wizard World Philly.
Yeah. And I went in 2005, and I feel like that was like the second or third Wizard World in Philly.
When they gave you your badge to get into the show, they supplied it on a Nintendo lanyard.
Yeah, of course, right.
A keychain that was just the Nintendo logo.
It just had Nintendo on it, yeah.
And everyone who had this lanyard was in a secret club from then on. And for a few years, at least afterwards, you would spot people around who had this lanyard kind of like sticking out of their pocket, as was the style in the early Y2Ks.
Right.
And you'd be like, that guy went to Wizard World in 2002 or 2003.
Right. So I worked on Trading Spaces, and there was me and this other PA, who we ended up being like the carpenters on the show, Stu. I didn't really know him, and he had one. And I remember I had my lanyard, and I was like, yo, man, did you go to Wizard World? And like, he looked at me like I caught him. like, busted. This guy knows I'm a nerd. And I was like, so did I.
And you showed him your lanyard.
I showed him mine, yeah. And we we jump high-fived, and everyone's minds were blown. Everyone applauded. I went because a friend of mine from high school, he bought tickets for him and his girlfriend, and they broke up.
I wonder why.
Him and his much older girlfriend, I remember, and they. But that's a whole other episode of Not for Nothing. He had a much older girlfriend, and they broke up. And I remember he called me. He was like, "Hey, do you know any like hot nerds who want to go to Wizard World with me?" I was like, "No, I absolutely don't know any hot nerds who want to go to a comic book convention with you." And I know you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
And I think 10 minutes later, my phone rang. I was at home, I was like, our landline, our only phone rang, and he was like, "Hey, so you want to go?" I was like, "Yeah, but you got to pick me up."
Like a date.
Like a date, yeah. I know a hot nerd. And I just had I remember leaving. I had all my stuff with me.
Best date ever.
That was it was a great date.
I hope the second date lived up to it.
Well, then I went 2006, so I went with you. I remember coming back. I was like, "Yo, we all gotta go to Wizard World. Wizard World is amazing."
The first year that Wizard World came to Philadelphia, I read in the Daily News, the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics gave an interview, how excited he was to be in Philadelphia and how happy he was to be expanding the brand and coming to this great town. And he was staying at the Marriott, but he hoped to get down to South Philly for a cheesesteak. Yeah. And I was like, I saw an opportunity there, and I was like,
I remember when you did this.
So I called the Marriott Hotel from work. I was at work. I used my work phone to call the Marriott Hotel, and I was like, "Hey, could you please put me through to Joe Quesada's room?"
Joe Quesada! That's who it was. I know who that is now, but I didn't know who that was then. Oh, my God.
And they did. They put me right through.
Oh, yeah.
They were like, "Yeah, sure." The Marriott doesn't care. And I was like, "Hey, Joe Quesada, this is John Zito. I read your interview in the Daily News, and I heard you would like to get a cheesesteak. I live a couple of blocks away from Pat's and Gino's if you want to."
He was like, "Nerds!" Why did I admit where I'm staying? He would never do that now. And he put it in the Daily News.
They have a rule now. It's named after me. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Don't do that, anybody.
Don't do that.
Yeah, that was my That was my first celebrity interaction related to Wizard World. Did you have any celebrity interactions related to Wizard World?
I never really cared about any of the celebrities that were there. The washed up wrestlers, the TV stars. But some people know I'm a huge Ghostbuster fan. Ernie Hudson was there. I was like, "What's he doing here?" We were so broke. I couldn't even afford to get an autograph, but I was so starstruck. And I know for a fact he was in his flight suit. He was dressed like
he was in his Ghostbuster uniform.
He was dressed like
Do you remember? I don't
question.
remember. Did it say Winston or did it say Ernie Hudson on the name tag?
I was afraid to even get close. But how about you?
There were a lot of B celebrities. There were a lot of journeyman actors and just famous people from one project at the Wizard Worlds over the years.
Yeah.
I think most of them were like super nice, but you had to like come at them in the right way. Like for instance, Lou Ferrigno does not like talking about the Incredible Hulk, but
he does.
No, he doesn't. If you come up to him and you go right for the Hulk, he's like kind of like, oh, sign your thing, get out of here. But if you walk up to Lou Ferrigno and you start talking about Mr. Universe, he was the youngest Mr. Universe.
Oh, like bodybuilding stuff. Well, that's his passion.
That's his passion. And well, then you're in. Now you're hanging out with Lou Ferrigno. Just a tip.
Yo,
just a tip.
What are you doing later?
You want to go down to South Philly for a cheesesteak?
Yeah, there's Pat's and Gino's, but I know the real place to get a cheesesteak.
Never follow South Philadelphia into a second location. Well, I don't remember when the very first time was, but when we were going to Wizard World as fans while we were still trying to break in, Jim Steranko came, and he's like a big artist from the 70s, and he's got a nostalgia following, but he's not really in the business anymore. So we went over to see him and kind of like, again, do that thing you do at comic book conventions, ask artists for advice and ways to like break in or whatever. And
how do you draw hands?
It's hard.
It's hard.
So we went over to go see Jim Steranko, and he was like real generous with his advice. And I think the first thing he told us to do, we were like, Jim, what should we do? What should we do? We're trying to be artists and writers in comic books. And he was like, do you own your name as a website? And
we were like, a website.
We were like, no. And he was like, go home and buy your name.
He was like an old man, and we're like in our 20.
Yeah.
And like telling us, you should get on the internet. And
yeah.
We're like, oh, yeah, good idea.
Yeah, go home and buy your name as a URL. And he's like, he's an old man who has a big white pompadour. He wears turtlenecks and sports coats. And that's weird, but so did I. I wore those clothes too. That's what I was wearing at the time. I had a big pompadour. And
bigger sunglasses,
even bigger sunglasses than him. So he must have seen some. He must have seen. I don't know whether he thought we were making fun of him or if
or like this kid's cosplaying as me.
Something about this kid I like him. But like I had like this like it's just like how my hair was at the time. I didn't know I wasn't intentionally trying to look like Jim Steranko. You just was.
And I don't want to say you like dressed like him. I would say he was your fashion icon.
Yes, I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. I would agree. I didn't, unintentionally. But when we met, it was like looking in a mirror, and we did that thing where like...
Yeah, you gotta punch each other. You can punch each other's fists.
We knew each other's karate moves.
Karate moves, yeah. Just jump into cosplaying wasn't popular the first years we went, and then I feel like it got super popular as nerd culture grew.
Yeah.
It got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was almost like one of the reasons you go to comic conventions.
I would say in 2002, people showed up like in Halloween store-bought Spider-Man costumes.
Right.
Very few people were making their own from scratch. Do you remember Shitty Galactus?
Shitty Galactus, absolutely. I took a picture of Shitty Galactus reading one of our books. As
Shitty Galactus, if you're out there, we
miss you. We think about you all the time. I remember I even submitted that picture to Celebrity, which was an old Philly blog. Joey Sweeney, if you're listening. And they posted it, and I felt so... And I was like, yo, this is Shitty Galactus. This is awesome. And they wrote it, and they're like, Shitty Galactus. This is Tony Trov, but Shitty Galactus.
I also remember there was a guy who had a Blue Beetle costume, but it was definitely several sizes too small.
I like when people cosplay out of their body type. I like when people are like, you know what? I'm like not a muscle man.
Like a really skinny He-Man.
I'm like a little skinny guy, but I'm gonna be the Hulk. Like I don't know. And like the people who go to comic events, like I'm sorry to even making fun because there is like an absolute acceptance when you go to a convention.
Sure, absolutely.
And there's like I'm not gonna make fun of you. That's a great job. I don't know. I like that. I'm not making fun.
This is us enjoying it and reveling in it.
I guess I just would never do that.
I don't have balls.
I would never ever do that.
Outside of Halloween, I don't have the constitution to put on a silly costume like that. That takes a
you always go comfortable costume for Halloween.
I do, yeah. And a lot of cosplay costumes are not comfortable. You're trying to achieve the impossible. Well, hence how you end up with shitty Galactus sometimes.
Last year for Halloween, I was movie quality Ghostbuster, and it was, man, that proton pack, very heavy. Very heavy.
I remember one time a guy came dressed as Iron Man, and this guy dressed as Iron Man was in a real Iron Man costume with moving parts, lasers and cannons and that faceplate. And we asked him, like, how do you go to the bathroom in that thing? And he was like, you don't.
You just don't. You just don't. Just don't drink any water.
You just dehydrate yourself all day, like the real Iron Man.
What was the one? He used to come like every year. He's Aquaman's enemy.
Black Manta.
Black Mantis. That was a great costume.
Black Manta. Yeah.
He used to talk through like a speaker, and he was mean.
He was mean. Because he's a bad guy.
A bad guy.
He's Black Manta. He's a bad guy. But what we did for most of our time at these conventions was vending. For many years, while we were breaking into and working in the comic book industry, we did signings, we worked tables, we were in Artist's Alley. We were big shots.
Retail. We were big shots in the comic book biz.
Definite F-listers.
I guess we went to, I guess doesn't count as for this topic, but we went to New York Comic Con in 2008. We won our contract and we went right to Comic Con. And then I guess we've probably vended in Philly then in 2009.
Yeah. When we would go to New York or San Diego, we would get to hang out at the DC Comics booth or the Image Comics booth because that was the company we worked for.
Right.
But in Philadelphia, those companies did not send their representation. They didn't have booths for themselves. We would get our own tables in Philadelphia at the Philadelphia Wizard World. And sometimes they would put us with the retailers, which is kind of like a step up. But the first couple of years we started, we were in Artist's Alley, which is, work for hire, freelance guys, people selling their own art, pinups, and autographs that they've collected over the years. It's more mishmashy.
Yeah, yeah. I forgot how hard it is. And you're in the convention center, and it's kind of like going to these conventions. The more you pay, the better the spot you get. And even when the publishers did come, they paid like an outrageous amount of money. They usually have their own carpets down. They used to have like these big things behind them. And if you're if you're doing that at the convention center, you're hiring the local, the carpenters union to put this stuff together for you, and it's pretty impossible as an independent artist to get these things made or done, because you're not only getting them printed and made, but then you're hiring people to lay them out for you. So we were always kind of like figuring out how to like make a splash. But because we didn't really have much money to put in this, we always got put in like the worst spots.
Yeah. I remember
they put us in the bathroom.
They did. They put us by the bathroom. I don't know if it was the first or the second year, but they put us right by the bathroom.
We're like, well, someone's got to go to the bathroom at some point.
In fact, they did. We saw Stan Lee several times that weekend.
Yep.
He came down to the Philly Comic Convention, and I would say
I think Stan Lee before he was like...
Before the Marvel movies.
Before the Marvel movies,
it's like Iron Man might have been out.
Yeah,
Spider-Man was out.
He was in Mallrats,
And I guess he was having, old man prostate problems, but we saw a ton of them on his way to the bathroom.
We saw a bunch, yeah.
And then I remember when we finally had enough money, they moved us up to the retail section, and they put us our first year in the retail section, they put us right next to another vendor. It was a guy pushing his comic. We were pushing our comics. He was pushing his comic. And I
don't think it even came out. That was the other thing, too. He was launching his franchise.
Yes. And he had... It was called Whore, and the R, Whore, and the R was a gun. Like The Sopranos, R is a gun. It was like that. And it was like...
we were like, oh.
He had like 12-foot, 15-foot banners on either side of his table with these like... not poorly drawn, but definitely anatomically incorrect, half-naked ladies.
People were like, where are you guys at? I'm like, we're next to the whore booth. Can't miss it. Can't miss it.
One year, they set us up next to the Army recruiting station. I don't know if you remember this.
Yes.
But it was Avengers themed. It had like Captain America and Hulk and Iron Man and stuff. And it was like a physical challenge set up. And they were like, oh, you could do 20 pull-ups. You should be in the Army.
Yeah, yeah. You have like the wall you can climb.
Yeah.
And both times I've ever done this, I climbed the wall and then I came down, I like missed the cushion. At a certain point, so we were working at DC and DC Comics we were on the payroll and everything. And the company got a new president, right? And this is when movies were really blowing up for the comic book industry. And DC Comics was in New York for like 100 years, and that's when they closed the company there and they moved everything to the West Coast. And because we worked for this small imprint, that's when they closed our imprint. They fired all the editors and
everyone you know,
like, doesn't work there anymore, and it's like that's that. So we didn't like. It wasn't like they're like, you two stink, get out of here. They just kind of like they just closed all. No more zombies, no more vampires. They kind of just focused on the main characters. So we took, we had like, we made the money we made in comic books and we decided to make a horror movie. And with that, we figured that was like a natural transition.
Yeah, we're going to go from Comic Cons to horror cons.
Horror cons. We were like, okay, like.
That makes sense, right?
And we started like recruiting people to come and work on the movie. Someone posted on Reddit, hey, I'm trying to get into the film industry. Does anybody know how you can do that? And I replied, hey, I'm making a horror movie. It's probably not what you want to work on, but you can come and work on this movie. We have no money, and it'll be really fun. This person ended up being my future wife. So fast forward, we were vending at a convention, and my wife Joanna was that day. It was her first and last day working at the cafe behind the art museum. And she like went in and she was like, I quit. I'm not doing this. So I think her father and her brother were at the convention. She was like, I'm just going to go over there, maybe get a ride home. And she came to the convention and she was like, this guy from Reddit is making a movie. I'm going to go and try and meet him. And she found our booth and she said she was expecting like this creepy guy to be there.
And she got exactly what she expected. Yep. As advertised. And she showed up and it was me and Stu. We're there, and she goes, hey, I messaged you on Reddit, and I want to, work on this movie. I was like, oh, cool, let me get your information. And then and she was like, and don't look at my Reddit history. And I looked at it, and she had been posting, she'd be so mad, erotic photos of the creature from the Black Lagoon. These are the kind of creeps who hang out at Comic-Con.
These are the kind of creeps who hang at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Joanna. And it was love at first sight. Hey, we stayed in touch, and now we're married for like 15 years. We have a baby. So you never know what you're going to find at Comic-Con, at Wizard World.
Yeah. Wizard World, a place where magical things happen.
Where magic comes true.
It's in the name.
It's in the name.
It's in the name, Wizard World.
Wizard World.
Open yourself up to new possibilities.
At the same comic convention, same Wizard World, I met Joanna. We're all losing our jobs at DC. Our editor Kwanzaa and another assistant editor Sarah Litt came to Wizard World almost like to be like, we like you guys, we're gonna just come and hang out.
Yeah, they were just like showing support. And we ended up over at the Absinthe Bar on Sansom Street. I don't even know if it's still there.
Absinthe Bar.
But it was like, ooh, this is absinthe. Absinthe is
it's
legal
made of wormwood,
now.
it'll drive you crazy. You might fall in love with me. I forgot. That's so funny you remember that detail.
So we took him over there, and we were like all trying absinthe, and poor Sarah turned her back for 2 seconds, and somebody walked off with her purse. And she was like, my purse got stolen. And we were like, no, I'm sure that's not what happened. I'm sure it just must be under the table or whatever. And she had the bartender check the security camera, and a woman just walked up right behind her, took her purse, and left. It was like not even slick.
Welcome to Philadelphia.
Yeah. Oh, Christ.
I don't know. When you're trying to impress out-of-towners, something gets stolen, and we reveal what it's really like to be.
It's like you stole it.
It felt, yes. It was like it was pretty much like I stole it.
Wizard World kind of tapered off after that. It became Fan Expo. They sold Wizard the magazine folded, and they sold off the conventions to another company. And so now I think it's called Fan Expo, and it still comes around in June, and it's probably run by the same people, and probably a lot of the same folks go to it. But
well, I don't know. We're just not in the comic book industry. We're no longer trying to get in the comic book industry, and we no longer work in the comic book industry. And some people find this disappointing, but I'm not trying to get back in the comic book industry.
Okay, I guess that's probably pretty much all there is to know about our Wizard World.
What else could
memories.
you say about Wizard World?
That's it. I think that's all there is.
It put a spell on me.
So check us out online. We're southfellini.com. That's SOUTHFELLINI.com. Find us at 1507 East Passyunk Avenue in beautiful South Philly.
What about Patreon?
Sign up for our Patreon. Listen to our podcast for free on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube.
And anywhere else you get your podcast.
That's right.
That's right.
See you next week.
See you next time.